Ever since I was little, I've been different from normal kids. I can see the ghosts of dead people. But my dad never believed me, he called me a liar. Only my mom and the family always trusted me and would comfort me. But this time, my dad died, yet I didn't see his ghost. After I told my mom about this, she seemed lost in thought. Later, disregarding my grandma's suggestion of a burial, my mom insisted on cremating my dad. Only after that was I finally able to see my father's ghost. At 7 years old, I didn't think death was frightening at all. Because as long as I wanted to, I could see their ghosts. Dad doesn't like hearing me talk about such things. He says there are no ghosts in this world. He thinks what I say are just children's illusions, and later even called me a liar. I think Dad is the worst, he doesn't believe me. But Mom has always trusted me. Last time, when the breakfast shop owner's son downstairs went missing, it was me who saw his ghost. That's how I found out he had been killed and buried under a tree. Downstairs, Ming's grandmother passed away, but they couldn't find the bank book she had left behind. It was only after I asked her spirit and told them that they found it. But Mom always forbids me from telling others that I can see spirits. The few times before, Mom secretly wrote little notes and placed them along their usual paths, so they would find them. They never suspected my involvement, thinking it was just their family members manifesting themselves. Actually, that's not entirely wrong, their family members did manifest, it's just that they couldn't see them. But this time, although my dad was lying there motionless, and Grandma said he was already dead, why didn't I see his ghost? I searched everywhere for Dad's figure, but couldn't find any trace. Suddenly, there was a loud slap. When I looked up, I saw my grandma had fiercely slapped my mom across the face. "You jinx. You must have upset my son, which is why he took his own life in despair. Damn it all, what sin did I commit to end up with a daughter-in-law like you? My poor son, so young, has already left this world. I never agreed when Winston wanted to marry you. At such a young age, you already brought misfortune to your own parents, and now you brought it upon my son too." My mother explained, "Yesterday, some debt collectors came and said Winston owed them money. They threatened to make Winston pay if he didn't return the money today. Winston must have been driven to despair because of this. Mom, let's hurry and take Winston to the hospital. What if there's still a chance to save him?" My mom wanted to step forward to check on Dad, but Grandma stopped her. "He's already stopped breathing. What's the point of going to the hospital? It'll just be a waste of money. You knew my son was being chased by debt collectors and was in a bad mood. Why didn't you keep a better eye on him? If you had been watching him all the time, would he have found the chance to kill himself? Cry, 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 that's all you can do, you useless thing who can't even bear a son. If your luck weren't so bad, how could my son owe people money? Seeing you just ruins my mood. Go and cook for me right now. Once I've eaten, I can send my son back to our hometown for burial." My mom was about to say something else when my grandma suddenly swung her hand to slap me across the face. Although I dodged sideways, I still got hit slightly. I've grown accustomed to this kind of beating and scolding, and my dodging has become more skilled over time. The reason I can't completely avoid it yet is because I'm still young. Once I grow a bit older, I'll definitely be able to dodge it entirely. But Mom still felt sorry for me. She took me by the hand and led me to the kitchen. Mom hugged me tightly and said, "Don't be afraid, Ranny, Mommy will protect you." I said, "Mom, it's so strange, why can't I see Dad's ghost? You know I can see all ghosts who have died within the last 3 months." My mother's expression froze. "Maybe you were too grief-stricken to see clearly." "I'm not sad at all that Dad is dead. He was a bad father, he would hit you and let Grandma bully you too. He always forced you to go out with those strange uncles, even though I know you didn't want to. You often cried under the covers, Mom, you were never happy. It's all my fault. If I hadn't fallen last time when Mom tried to run away with me, we might have escaped by now." I kept thinking, if only I wasn't here, Mom could have run away. But now our chance has come. With Dad dead, even if we don't run, we won't be beaten anymore. And Mom won't be forced to do things she hates. But Mom, what if Dad isn't really dead? Otherwise, why can't I see his ghost? The words poured out of me like beans from a bamboo tube, unstoppable and incessant. Mom's expression suddenly turned grave after hearing my words. She looked thoughtfully in Dad's direction, lost in contemplation. Mom said to me, "Rani, I need to confirm something. Stay hidden here and don't move, okay?" I nodded and said, "Mom, don't worry, I promise I'll stay still and won't move." Then Mom suddenly seemed to go berserk and rushed over to where Dad was. She turned her head sideways and pressed her ear against Dad's chest. Mom wailed, "Winston, how could you be so cruel? Leaving us as a widow and orphan with so much debt, how are we supposed to survive?" Mom kept pounding on Dad's body, and Grandma tried to pull her away. But she wasn't strong enough to stop Mom. If it weren't for Dad being an accomplice and me holding Mom back, Mom could have beaten Grandma in the fight. I don't know if it was my imagination, but I thought I saw the muscles on Dad's face twitching, making him look somewhat ferocious. It was also at that moment I spotted a long-absent glimmer in Mom's eyes. Grandma and Mom were still bickering noisily when suddenly a group of menacing-looking people burst into the house, all carrying long sticks. Leading them was a yellow-haired young man with colorful tattoos on his arm, who shouted as soon as he entered, "Tell that bastard Winston to come out and pay up." My grandmother, who was just yelling at my mom with full vigor, now shrank back like a timid quail. My mom said, "Winston's dead. Look, his body's right here, already lifeless." The blonde guy said, "What bad luck, but this doesn't mean the debt disappears. You're his wife, right? Now that he's dead, you'll pay it for him. He borrowed money from me, and there are IOU notes for every penny. Even if you take it to court, he still owes me. But he never gave me any of the money he borrowed, not even living expenses. I don't know where his money went." Seeing my mother's sallow, emaciated, and malnourished appearance, this statement was very convincing. However, this did not make the delinquent back down. After much pleading from my mother, the delinquent finally agreed to come back a week later, giving us time to arrange the funeral. After the creditor left, my grandmother started acting tough again. "Let me tell you, you'll have to pay back all that money yourself." "I don't have any money. Mom, Winston's factory is struggling, and it's already insolvent. The house has been mortgaged, and all our savings were taken by him to plug the financial hole. How can I possibly repay any of it? That's all because you brought bad luck. Anyway, I don't care. If you can't pay it back, you'll go to jail. Let me tell you, I won't lift a finger for that money-losing burden, Rani." Seeing my grandmother's stubbornness, my mother stopped arguing and instead said, "Mom, let's just take Winston to the hospital." Grandma said, "I've already checked, he's not breathing anymore. There's no bringing him back. And where would we even get the money for medical treatment now?" "Mom, but I've heard some people can go into a state of suspended animation or shock. If we rush him to the hospital, there might still be a chance he could survive. Haven't you read those news stories about people suddenly waking up in the morgue?" Hearing my mom's words, Grandma's expression showed a hint of unease. But she still insisted, "My son drank paraquat. That stuff, not even doctors, let alone immortals, could save someone from it." Mom murmured, "But if we don't go to the hospital, where can we get a death certificate?" "Without a death certificate, I can't handle Winston's debts. Winston is still the primary debtor." "Mom, I understand now. You did this intentionally for my sake, didn't you?" "That's a brilliant idea. You take Winston back to our hometown for burial. When the debt collectors come, I'll tell them Winston faked his death and has already run away, so they should go after Winston for the money. Anyway, I have no money, and Winston is still alive. No matter how much they pressure me, it's useless. So they can only continue to demand repayment from Winston, which means we're safe." "Mom, I've misunderstood you all these years. I always thought you were a bad mother-in-law, but it turns out you're someone who's always looked out for me." As she spoke, Mom grabbed Grandma's hand and started sobbing. Mom's words put Grandma in a passive position, leaving her momentarily speechless. She kept glancing in Dad's direction, but Dad remained motionless, unable to respond. But soon, Grandma pushed Mom away. She said she needed to use the bathroom, then took the phone and went into the toilet. The sound of water running from the faucet in the bathroom never stopped. By the time Grandma came out again, she already wore that confident, victorious expression once more. "Yuki, I heard that the neighborhood office can issue a death certificate for someone who died at home. It doesn't necessarily have to be at a hospital. It just so happens I know someone who works at the neighborhood office. She said she could help me get the certificate directly." Mom said, "But I heard that only when someone dies of natural causes can the neighborhood committee issue a certificate. Since Winston committed suicide, wouldn't we need a certificate from the police bureau for this?" Grandma said, "Why are you so stubborn? If we don't say it's a suicide, who would know? Having connections makes things easier. They've already promised to handle it properly, so just wait." Not long after, an aunt came over and brought Dad's death certificate. I knew that aunt. Dad told me to call her Cindy. Several times I'd seen her coming out of the room with Dad, both looking disheveled. But Dad warned me not to tell Mom. Of course I wouldn't listen to Dad, but I discovered that when I told Mom about it, she only became more upset. Mom and Dad would argue, and Dad would even hit Mom. So after that, I stopped telling Mom about it. Cindy said some words to my mom like "please accept my condolences," and then left. She didn't look sad or upset at all. Mom proposed that she keep the death certificate, using the reason that it was needed to handle debt-related matters. Grandma objected, but Mom said if it wasn't handled, the debt would still be under Dad's name. So Grandma eventually gave in. Mom told Grandma that she had arranged for a minibus to leave tomorrow morning. The vehicle would take Dad and Grandma back to their hometown. Mom also suggested she wanted to go back with them, but Grandma refused. Grandma said the local custom was that only men could attend the burial, and since Mom and I going back wouldn't make a difference, we should just stay here. Mom sadly agreed to Grandma's request. That night, my mom cooked a lot of dishes, all made from meat that Grandma had previously scavenged from the trash. Grandma never ate those things herself, she only let me and my mom eat them. She would always eat the meat she bought separately. Mom was afraid it would upset our stomachs, so she never let me eat that meat. She would quietly throw it away when Grandma wasn't looking. Grandma controlled all the household expenses, and Mom barely had any money, so we could only afford the cheap, leftover meat from the market. But Mom always said even that was much cleaner and safer than what Grandma fished out of the trash. But on that day, Mom secretly cooked the meat Grandma had picked up and fed it to her, lying that it was what Grandma had bought earlier. Grandma never expected Mom would dare to deceive her, so she ate it with great relish. As she ate, Grandma kept complaining, "There's too much salt and chili in this meat, it completely overpowers the natural flavor. You should be more careful when cooking next time." I knew Mom had done it on purpose. Otherwise, Grandma would have noticed something was off about the meat's taste from the first bite. Grandma forbade Mom and me from eating that plate of meat, just as well, we didn't dare touch it either. That night, Grandma's wails could be heard. At first, she was going to the bathroom every 10 minutes, but soon she couldn't even make it out of the bathroom. My mom rushed my grandmother to the hospital. The doctor said she had food poisoning from eating food contaminated with excessive E. coli bacteria. Grandma was left at the hospital for treatment, while my mom took me away under the pretext of going home to fetch a change of clothes. After we got home, the minibus Mom had arranged to take Dad and Grandma back to their hometown also arrived. Mom had someone carry Dad onto the car. I asked Mom, "Didn't Grandma get hospitalized?" "She can't send Dad back to our hometown now." "Are the two of us going to send him back alone?" Mom smiled and said to me, "We are sending your dad, but not back to our hometown, we're sending him off on his final journey." "Is sending Dad off on his final journey and sending him back to our hometown the same thing?" My mother didn't speak, she just stroked my head and said, "Ranny, Mom won't let anyone bully you anymore." My mother and I took this car to the crematorium. She paid extra to have Dad scheduled as the first for cremation. The death certificate brought by Cindy was very useful. Without that death certificate, the crematorium wouldn't have cremated Dad. Mom seemed extremely anxious, as if afraid something unexpected might happen, constantly checking her watch. My mom kept asking me if I had seen Dad's ghost. To reassure her, I looked around anxiously. After searching for a long time, I finally saw Dad's ghost. Upon hearing this news, my mom let out a long sigh of relief. I said, "Mom, Dad is scolding you. He says you caused his death. But wasn't he the one who committed suicide? What else did your father say?" "Wait, can your father hear us talking?" I said, "It would have been possible, but Dad has been dragged away by other ghosts now." Mom asked me, "Can you command other ghosts?" I replied, "No, it's because Dad was barging around recklessly and bumped into other ghosts. He's being beaten by those ghosts right now and won't be able to come over for a while." Mom said, "You scared me, I thought you could actually command ghosts." I smiled innocently, looking every bit like a naive little child. Mom would never have imagined that I would lie to her. I continued to pretend, not wanting her to discover my terrible secret. Mom asked, "What else did your dad say just now?" "Dad said you're a foolish woman. He could have left the debt to you by faking his death, and he could have run off with that Cindy. But now you've ruined everything." Mom wore an expression that said she had expected this all along. I asked her, "Did you already know that Dad was pretending to be dead, trying to make us pay off his debts?" Mom hesitated, looking at me as if she wanted to say something but held back. I said, "Mom, I'm not a child anymore. You don't have to hide everything from me. I can help you share the burden." My words gave Mom confidence, so she continued, "I didn't know at first, but your grandma's behavior was just too unusual. The son she treated as her treasure, she didn't even take him to the hospital before declaring him dead. And she insisted on a burial, which is completely against common sense. Especially after you said you didn't see your dad's ghost, I felt even more that something wasn't right. When I pretended to grieve and threw myself over your dad earlier, I observed carefully. Even though his body couldn't move, there was still a faint heartbeat. He must have been given a general anesthetic. Ranny, even though your dad is dead, your grandma's side definitely won't let this go quietly. Your father also has some unresolved debts. Since he wants to fake his death, his money definitely won't just vanish. I need to find a way to track it down. For now, just pretend you can't see your dad and follow my instructions. Can you secretly tell me what your father says and does?" I promised loudly, "Yes, Mom." After Dad was released with a bruised and swollen face, Mom and I took his ashes from the crematorium and went to the hospital together. I waited for him because I was really afraid my dad would get lost as a ghost on his own. If he were to disappear just like that, it would be quite troublesome. When we arrived at the hospital, Grandma was asleep. According to an elderly woman in the neighboring bed, my grandma had woken up earlier and, finding neither me nor my mom there, cursed loudly for half an hour. Later, my grandma said she wanted to buy some food, but the doctor stopped her. So, she proceeded to curse the doctor for another half an hour before finally falling asleep just now. "Is this your mother-in-law? She looks so lively, doesn't seem sick at all." Mom said, "My mother-in-law has always been full of energy. She's been having diarrhea all night and has nothing left in her stomach. I'm going out to buy her some plain congee. If she wakes up, could you please tell her?" Mom placed the box containing Dad's ashes on the cabinet next to Grandma's hospital bed, then took me and left. Mom took me to a big restaurant and ordered a lot of delicious food. It had been so long since I'd eaten anything that good. I swallowed hard and asked my mom, "Aren't these things too expensive? Do we have enough money?" Mom said, "Ranny, eat up. From now on, we'll have meals this lavish every day." By the time we finished eating and returned to the hospital, it was already over 2 hours later. Grandma had woken up. When she saw us come through the door, she grabbed a water cup and hurled it at my mom. But my mom had anticipated it and dodged in advance. Mom yelled angrily, "Did you poison my food? How else could I have gotten food poisoning while you two are perfectly fine?" Do you think just because my son is gone, you can bully me? She wailed after saying this. After Grandma's outburst, people in the ward had already started pointing and whispering about Mom and me. Quick thinking, I rushed forward and hugged Grandma, saying, "Grandma, how can you say such things about Mom and me? We're heartbroken that you're sick. But the meat at home was only for you and Dad. Mom and I weren't allowed to have any. Otherwise, I'd be suffering right alongside you." Seeing that her complaints weren't gaining sympathy, and noticing the gossip shifting toward her, Grandma quickly changed the subject. She said to her mom, "Stop dawdling and hurry up with my discharge procedures. I still need to take my son home. Let's go now, not a moment to waste." As the old saying goes, falling leaves return to their roots. My son is all alone out there drifting, and whenever I think about it, my heart aches unbearably. As I looked at my father's ghost crouching by Grandma's bedside, I thought, Dad isn't lonely at all, he's been keeping you company this whole time. But what exactly just happened? Why does Dad's ghost look so sad? Too upset to even come trouble Mom. Of course, he didn't really have the ability to cause trouble for anyone anymore. Mom said, "It takes over 10 hours to drive back to our hometown from here. I really can't bear to see you exhaust yourself like this. So I've already had Winston's body cremated. You can just carry the urn and fly back directly. Even though Winston is gone and we still owe a huge debt, for the sake of your health, I absolutely can't skimp on this expense." My grandmother asked in disbelief, "What did you say? What happened to Winston?" My mom repeated, "I said your son has already turned to ashes, no need to go through the trouble of sending him back to the hometown. I packed the ashes already, you can just take them and go." To avoid making people uncomfortable on the plane, I even disguised the urn. "Huh, where's the urn I put here?" Grandma yelled, "You damned woman, why didn't you listen to me? I told you we should bring him back to the hometown for burial, why did you have to make your own decision? My son isn't even dead, you killed my son, you owe me my son back." My mom said, "Mom, what are you talking about? Winston committed suicide, don't you remember? The death certificate was even issued by someone you knew. The crematorium accepted that death certificate." At this moment, my dad was finally stirred by the commotion outside. Crying, he said, "I was just pretending to be dead, you idiot. If you had just obediently paid off my debts for me, everything would have been fine. Why did you have to take matters into your own hands? Wah. I haven't even seen my son be born yet. I haven't had the chance to tell Cindy where I hid the money. You fool, not only did you kill me, but you even made my mom drink my ashes." "What? Drink ashes?" Following my dad's finger, I looked over and indeed saw the box containing his ashes. Pointing at the box beside Grandma's pillow, I said to Mom, "Mom, I found Dad's ashes." So Grandma knew these were Dad's ashes and put them beside her pillow to cherish his memory properly. I walked over and picked up the urn, saying, "But why is the outside so dirty? It looks like some spilled out." The elderly lady in the neighboring hospital bed said, "Your grandma said she felt weak earlier and made a cup of that protein powder." "So that wasn't protein powder, it was your father's ashes?" The conversation between me and the elderly neighbor distracted my grandma from her cursing at my mom. She looked at the box I was holding and said, "What urn? Isn't that just the protein powder container?" My mom said, "Isn't it inconvenient for you to carry an urn on the plane?" I deliberately disguised it this way. "See, if I hadn't told you, wouldn't you have thought it was health supplements?" "But Mom, did you really drink Winston's ashes? How could you do that? He was your own son." After speaking, Mom burst into loud tears, but I knew it was all an act. No wonder Mom specially bought a box of protein powder earlier and even gave the powder inside to the clerk. Turns out she had planned this all along. Mom is truly amazing. Then I can't hold Mom back either, I need to become more useful and provide her with more information. When Grandma found out that her son had died and that she had even drunk his ashes, she was so furious that she fainted. Fortunately, Grandma was already at the hospital, and the doctors arrived quickly. The doctor said she had a brain hemorrhage and needed immediate surgery. Mom broke down crying again, but doctor, my husband just died, and we still have a lot of debts unpaid. When my mother-in-law was hospitalized for food poisoning earlier, I already spent all our family savings. I really can't afford this now. The doctor said with difficulty, although surgery is an option for the patient's condition, there's no guarantee of restoring their health to what it was before the illness. However, without surgery, the patient is at high risk of permanent paralysis or even death. My father's ghost shouted, "You fool, haven't you saved any private money all these years? How can you not even afford the medical expenses? Mom, wake up quickly, tell them you still have private savings. That money is meant to save your life. The 1 million I left for you is more than enough for your treatment. Mom, please wake up, even if it's just to say one word." Inspired by my dad, I immediately pressed my ear to Grandma's lips and said to Mom, "Mom, I just heard Grandma speak. Grandma said she has secret savings, but she passed out again before telling us where they are. All of Grandma's things are at home, let's go back and search." The doctor said in confusion. The patient spoke? That shouldn't be possible, she should currently be in an unconscious state. My mother, upon hearing what I said, realized I had obtained the information from my father. She then said, "It must be the blessing from my late husband that made my mother-in-law reveal the crucial details. Doctor, we'll go back to get the money now and return immediately." After saying that, Mom took me home from the hospital. Dad didn't come with us, though, he stayed behind on his own. Once we got home, we started rummaging through Grandma's belongings. She had originally planned to take Dad back to their hometown and not return, so whatever money she had must have been hidden in the luggage she was preparing to bring along. Having a target made the search easier. Eventually, we found a bank book tucked between layers of folded clothes, with 6 handwritten digits on it. I knew right away it had to be the passcode for the bank book. I remember Grandma once said that the old lady downstairs used her birthday as a password, totally unsafe. And yet, my own grandma had the passcode right there on the bank book itself. She's even worse than Grandma downstairs. I opened the passbook and counted the zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there were a full 6 zeros. I asked Mom, "How much money is this?" Mom said, "Here's 1 million. My eyes widened, was Grandma really that wealthy? After getting the bank book, Mom contacted the creditors and used all the money to pay off the debts. Mom, aren't we going to save Grandma? Mom said, "Whether we save your grandma or not depends on how sincere your dad is. As for the money he transferred away, I won't compromise for a single day until he fills that hole." Ranny, do you think Mom is being cruel? I said, "No, if we don't do this, we'll have to help Dad pay off his debts." I heard him say he secretly hid the money, planning to live somewhere else with that Cindy, leaving you alone to shoulder the debt. Mom would suffer terribly, maybe even lose her life. Dad and Grandma left us no way out, so why should we care about them? My mother heard my words and patted my head contentedly. I was also very relieved to learn that my mother had a well-thought-out plan. It was worth all the effort I had put into paving the way for her up to this point. After paying off the debt, we returned to the hospital. Before entering the ward, my mother asked if I had seen my father's ghost. Only after receiving a positive answer did we go in. After receiving medical treatment, Grandma regained consciousness, but her face was distorted with a crooked mouth and slanted eyes, while drool kept dripping uncontrollably. Mom rushed to Grandma's side as soon as she entered the room, crying out that she was useless. "Mom, I found your secret savings. I wanted to use that money to save you. But unexpectedly, I was ambushed by the loan sharks right after leaving home. They snatched all the money, calling it interest. Those people even said they wouldn't let me pay for the surgery until we clear our debt. What should we do now?" Upon hearing this, my dad anxiously paced around in circles. "I have money, I converted all my savings into gold and hid it. Why aren't you rushing to find it?" Listening to Dad's incoherent explanation, I also grew frantic. "At least tell us where the money is hidden, how else are we supposed to find it?" For someone his age, it's irresponsible to stash money in a place only he knows, showing no awareness of potential risks. If it weren't for the fact that I could still see his ghost, all he'd have left behind is a mountain of debt, none of that money benefiting any of us. But then again, if it weren't for my ability to see ghosts and discover Dad was faking his death, he would have probably run off with that Cindy by now. Mom had the doctor prescribe some medication and then went through the discharge procedures for Grandma. Now Grandma can only move one hand and has trouble speaking clearly. But even so, it doesn't stop her from chattering non-stop. Though it's hard to make out what she's actually saying, judging by her tone, it's probably nothing nice. Grandma is completely bedridden, unable to take care of even her most basic needs, and the room reeks. Though Dad can't smell it, just the sight of it is enough to make you imagine the stench. My mom only gives Grandma plain rice porridge and pickles to eat every day. When asked, she claims we're broke and can't afford anything better. But she and I always sneak out to enjoy delicious food. 2 days later, Cindy showed up at our house. Cindy must have had some prior arrangement with Dad, but she hadn't been able to reach him these past few days, not even Grandma's phone would connect. Naturally, she was worried. So she had no choice but to come in person to see what was going on. My mom politely asked, "What brings you here?" Cindy said, "I haven't been able to reach Mrs. Liu, and I'm a bit worried, so I came to check on her." My mom replied, "As you know, my husband just passed away, and my mother-in-law couldn't handle the shock. She had a sudden cerebral hemorrhage and is now bedridden. Do you want to go in and see her?" But since my mother-in-law now eats, drinks, and relieves herself in bed, the room doesn't smell very pleasant. Cindy was shocked by the news of my grandmother's condition, but she quickly remembered a more pressing issue. "Mrs. Liu can't move, so what should we do with Winston's body?" My mom said, "What else can we do? Cremate it, of course. It's such hot weather, if we don't, the whole house will reek." Cindy gasped in horror, "How could you cremate a living person?" My mom replied, "You're quite amusing," saying the same thing my mother-in-law once said. Of course, we can't cremate a living person, that would be murder, and the crematorium wouldn't agree to it either. But Winston is already dead. It was you who issued the death certificate. To be honest, I should thank you. If it weren't for your help, I really wouldn't have known how to handle Winston's body. You see, with my mother-in-law in this state, how could we possibly take him back to our hometown? But why are both you and my mother-in-law insisting Winston isn't dead? You were the one who issued the death certificate. Could there be something fishy going on? Did you deliberately issue a fake certificate and cause Winston's death? My mom's heavy accusation left Cindy speechless. Without a death certificate, she could have claimed it was all just a joke, and my mom's actions, while not amounting to murder, would at least be considered manslaughter. But now that there's a death certificate, my dad could only have been dead before cremation. If this were exposed, Cindy, who abused her power for personal gain, would face even greater charges. To put it severely, she might even be accused of murder. As she spoke, my mom led Cindy into my grandma's room. Cindy still seemed dazed and didn't even notice the foul smell in the room. Grandma was also very emotional upon seeing Cindy. She kept staring at Cindy's belly. "Dad said he's going to have a son soon, it seems that child is already in Cindy's belly." Cindy's belly hasn't even started showing yet, so how are they so sure she's definitely carrying a son? Cindy said to Mom, "Could I speak with Mrs. Liu alone for a moment?" Mom replied, "Of course, I'll step out and leave you two be." Before leaving, Mom even closed the door behind her. Inside the room, 2 people and a ghost were left, who knows what they talked about. But whatever my grandma said, no one else could understand, and whatever my dad said, no one else could hear. Cindy went to find my grandma, definitely wanting to press for the location where my dad hid the money, but my grandma genuinely didn't know. Half an hour later, Cindy was so furious she tried to leave the room. Then, she ended up yanking the doorknob right off. The door was broken, and Cindy got trapped inside. After spending half an hour in my grandma's room, even if Cindy was slow to react, she couldn't have missed the strange smell. Cindy banged on the door desperately. "Yuki, unlock it from the outside and let me out." Mom said, "Oh no, I just yanked off the outside door handle. I'll go find a locksmith right now, just hang in there a little longer." Left with no choice, Cindy had to stay in that stinky room waiting for help, and that wait lasted a full 6 hours. The whole time, Cindy endured not only the foul smell from outside but also her own hunger and the growing pressure in her bladder. Cindy pleaded, "Can't we just break the door down? I really need to use the bathroom." I said, "Cindy, Mom's gone out, I'm the only one at home, and I can't break this door open. There are diapers in Grandma's room, why don't you grab those? They're super convenient." "Cindy, are you hungry? There's protein powder in Grandma's room. If you're hungry, just mix some to drink. I see Grandma drinks it often, she always says she's not hungry afterward." 6 hours later, my mom returned with a locksmith, and Cindy was finally freed. The smell in the room had grown even stronger. It wasn't just Grandma's doing, Cindy had contributed too. Cindy's face turned red, but she forced herself to say to my mom, "Mrs. Liu said she was worried Winston's spirit wouldn't rest in peace and wanted me to find someone to perform a ritual for him. The ritual requires Winston's ashes." "Where are his ashes?" "I need to borrow them for a few days." My grandma can only babble now, and her excuse was truly lame. But we didn't expose her. I said to her, "Dad's ashes are right by Grandma's bedside." I pointed to the protein powder box and said to Cindy, "This is it." The lid's been opened, and some of the ashes inside are missing." Cindy stared in the direction I was pointing, speechless, then stammered, "Isn't that protein powder?" I took out the actual protein powder from the drawer below. I said, "This is the protein powder. The one on Grandma's bedside is Dad's ashes." "What? I just told you it was okay to drink the protein powder, you didn't drink Dad's ashes, did you? Why are you like Grandma, enjoying drinking Dad's ashes? Does it taste better or something?" Hearing my words, Cindy gagged and ran out. Mom said to me, "That wasn't in the script, you improvised that, didn't you? You're such a little mischief maker." Having said that, my mom picked up my dad's urn and chased after them. Teasing Cindy made me happy. But Dad's ghost was clearly upset. His ashes had been consumed as health supplements by the two people he cared about most. That must have been unbearable. He wallowed in sorrow for a while, then suddenly lunged at me. He couldn't actually touch me at all. His action was just a way to vent his rage. But this time seemed different. I picked up a peachwood sword and stabbed it through his chest. Though he had no physical form, his soul began to dissipate after this strike. He asked in shock, "You can see me?" "Dad, I told you long ago that I can see ghosts, you just didn't believe me. If you had believed me earlier, you definitely wouldn't have faked your death because it's too easy to expose." Dad asked resentfully, "If you could see me all along, why did you wait until now to take action?" I said, "Of course I want to know where you hid the money. The reason I'm acting now is because I already know. You buried those gold bars under the tree where you first met Cindy. Although I don't know which one it is, Cindy does. Haven't you noticed? Cindy has been on her phone this whole time, she was messaging the con artist my mom hired. That con artist tricked Cindy by saying if she could get your ashes, he could perform a ritual at the spot where you first met to summon your spirit. That way, Cindy could ask you face to face where you hid the money. Do you know what Mom was really doing when she chased after Cindy just now? Thanks to Cindy's good memory, Mom has already found those gold bars. There were quite a few of those gold bars. Apart from paying off debts, the remaining amount is enough for Mom and me to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. No wonder it was the retirement fund you prepared for yourself and Cindy. My dear father, you truly are a beast. Using your own daughter to threaten your wife, forcing her to seduce other men while you reaped the benefits. I've wanted you dead for a long time. But before, I was still too young, and my abilities were limited. Yet I kept training and finally made myself strong enough. Do you know where you got the idea of faking your death? It was me, I sent a ghost into your dream to plant that thought in your head. Fortunately, you were shameless enough, or my plan wouldn't have worked. Rest in peace, my dear father. Just as my father's spirit completely vanished, the sound of my mother entering the house reached our ears. Everything fell into place with such perfect timing. The house we lived in wasn't reclaimed by my mother. It held too many memories we'd rather forget, so we simply bought a new place and moved out. Of course we wouldn't take Grandma with us. Mom sent Grandma to a nursing home, the cheapest kind. I heard the caregivers there abuse and scold the elderly. Hope Grandma can enjoy the rest of her days. Mom made it clear that Grandma must live a long, long life. Even the slightest discomfort in Grandma's health would require expensive treatments. As for Cindy, I heard she quickly had an abortion after realizing there was no more profit to squeeze from us. Mom and I, of course, will live happily ever after.